Shalom, family. It's nice to see you guys. Shabbat shalom, rather. Today we're going to be going over James chapter 3, and this teaching is called Bit and Bridle. I'm going to first start off by reading. It's only 18 verses long. I'm going to read and then I'm going to give a short commentary. Hallelujah. James chapter 3, verse 1. My brethren, be not many masters, knowing that we shall receive the greater condemnation. For in many things we offend all. If any man offend not in word, the same is a perfect man, and able also to bridle the whole body. Behold, we put bits in the horses' mouths, that they may obey us, and we turn about their whole body. Verse 4. Behold also the ships, which though they be so great, and are driven of fierce winds, yet are they turned about with a very small helm, whithersoever the governor wills. Verse 5. Even so the tongue is a little member, and boasts great things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindles. And the tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. So is the mouth among our members, that it defiles the whole body, and sets on fire the course of nature, and it is set on fire of Gehenna. Verse 7. For every kind of beast, and of birds, and of serpents, and of things in the sea, is tamed, and has been tamed of mankind. But the tongue can no man tame. It is an unruly evil, full of deadly poison. Therewith bless we Yahuah, even the Father, and therewith curse we men, which are made after the similitude of Yahuah. Out of the same mouth proceeds blessings and cursings. My brethren, these things ought not to be so. Does a fountain send forth at the same place sweet and bitter water? Can the fig tree, my brethren, bear olive berries, either a vine figs? So can no fountain both yield salt water and fresh water. Who is a wise man and endued with knowledge among you? Let him show out a good conversation his works with meekness of wisdom. But if ye have bitter envying and strife in your hearts, glory not, and lie not against the truth. This wisdom descends not from above, but is earthly, sensual, devilish. Verse 16. For where envying and strife is, there is confusion and every evil work. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace of them that make peace. Hallelujah. So James is just giving us some really, like I was telling you back in the first two chapters I went over, James just gives some really sound, foundational advice to believers. And in doing so, he teaches us just the basics of being what Yahuah would like us to be, as far as our dealings with each other, as far as our ability to study and show ourselves approved. I'm just going to do a couple minutes of just a little bit of commentary on those verses in chapter 3. And I made some notes. I'm going to go over these notes with you guys real quickly. So in verse 1, quickly James admonishes us. He teaches us and he warns teachers, and he warns, leaders that we should not teach to the detriment of believers, which we should not teach a false doctrine. And he tells us that there is greater condemnation to those that do. That came up. Hopefully it isn't showing when I uploaded. Anyway, we'll keep going. He tells us there is greater condemnation to those that do. Verse 2 to 5, he gives examples of how something so small with a tongue can actually control your eternal destination. And he talks about, this is really a great, just a everyday lesson for us, because we interact with people and we talk to people every day. And so specifically our loved ones, people that are closest to us, our children, our husbands, our wives, our friends, our work colleagues, we talk to these people every day. So James is telling us to, mind what we say, think about what it is we're going to say and how it's going to reflect on other people as well as ourselves, and how it's going to reflect on Yahuah, on Yehoshua HaMashiach. You know what I'm saying? So as believers, as Israel, people look to us for guidance on how to behave in a righteous manner, whether we want to believe that or not. It's actually true. So, and then he goes on in verse 6, he points out how powerful the tongue is in willfully sinning, which will defile the whole body, leading it to eternal damnation. Again, how many times have you been like really angry with someone in your family, especially like your mom or your dad, your sister and your brother, or coworker, or even your boss, and you want to tell them off, but you know that there are consequences for it. And so, again, the title is One Law Part 7, James chapter 3, Bit and Bridle, which he mentions early on as far as how we put a bit in a horse's mouth to control the whole body. So this tongue, we should be controlling this tongue, because it will determine our eternity, where we will spend eternity, right? So, in verse 7, he says that mankind can tame any living creature, birds, animals, serpents. But in verse 8, he says we fail to tame our own tongue. He says in verse 8, it is full of evil and deadly poison. And it says we use the tongue in verses 9 through 12. It says we use the tongue to bless Yahuah, our Elohim, and to curse men. So we use this tongue to both bless Yahuah and curse men. And James says this should not be, and he compares it to a fountain bringing forth both sweet and bitter water. He talks about a fig tree bringing forth both figs and berries, and he said all of this is not possible. So we shouldn't be, blessing Yahuah, praising Yahuah, and using the same tongue, the same mouth to curse Yahuah, to curse a person. Wow. Our brethren, let's put it this way, because we can, pray against our enemies. So I don't want to get that. I don't want that confusion. We can't pray against our enemies. Okay. So don't say you can't pray against your enemies, because you can. But we shouldn't be blessing Yahuah with this tongue and then cursing our brethren, our loved ones. So. And I think that's fair. And this just teach us to be slow to speak. We need to think about what we're going to say. We don't need to let our anger overcome us. A perfect example is that was last week. I had a conversation last Sunday. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with my sister, my older sister, and we don't get along as well as we probably should. And I know that a part of it is because I have turned away from the practices of Christianity. I've turned away from, all the holidays and all this kind of stuff. And it's kind of, and I think I said it, months back, where it's caused a rift in the family. And so she called me up, and we're trying to bridge those gaps and stuff, and repair our relationship. Is slow, arduous process. But anyway, so she called, and she was we just didn't get along. We couldn't get along. It's just not possible, because I'm not going to, you want to talk about Elohim, you want to talk about Yahuah, and I'm not going to overlook the obvious. You can't tell me that you love Yahuah and you eating pork. You can't tell me the law is done away with and you say you love Yahuah. So I have a really hard time overlooking those things. So and then she constantly provokes me. She provokes me. I get really, really angry, and I think it's because I love my sister, and I want her to come over in the truth and live righteously according to Scripture, not according to me, but according to Scripture. I really want that for her. And when she starts talking nonsense, it's very hard for me to just sit back and listen to it. And so I had to cut the conversation short, and I just can't listen to the nonsense anymore. So it makes for a very arduous relationship, and it keeps us from actually talking to each other, because I'm trying not to be provoked to sin, because the anger can get the best of us. So I'll just cut the conversation short, or I'll just try to change the subject, but they always come back to that point of contention. So we have to limit my conversation. So what James is telling us to do is we need to be very conscious of what we do with this tongue, because it's very, very powerful. And once the words leave our mouths, we can't take them back, right? So we need to be very, very clear on how powerful our words are. So, okay. And he says it again. And so should we not both bless Yah and curse men with our tongue? No, we shouldn't. And in verse 13 through 16, James speaks of a man's wisdom that is not born of meek wisdom, that is therefore born out of bitter envying and strife, which such wisdom comes against the truth. It is earthly wisdom, which is sensual and devilish. And we see this every day in the society we live in. It's what this world runs on. It's fueled with lies and deceit and falsities, and telling you from something as small as, is this what's trending? This is how you should be. This is what you should say. You guys, they have these new pronouns that they're using, that even some universities are requiring students and staff to use when addressing people, because they have decided that their gender is not conducive, or it does not equate to how they were born, what their genitalia is, male or female. So they have these pronouns out that you use now, and they want to instead of saying she or he, they want you to use some other pronouns. And I'm like, why? I mean, either you say a person's name, or you call them by their name, or you say, hey, hi, how you doing? If you say, hey, girl, is that so unusual? But even speaking these type of untruths with our tongues, it can change the whole society in which we live in. And that's what they're doing now. They're saying that you can be a man if you're a woman, if that's what you want to be. Or you can be a woman if you're a man, if that's what you desire to be. And that everybody in this society must adhere to what you want as an individual, as opposed to what is natural, what is normal, what Yahuah has deemed us to be through how we were born into this world. So the tongue in the media is very, very powerful. And it tells us that we can go contrary to the law, contrary to Yahuah's teaching on how to live a righteous life, and how he defines life, and how he is designated male and female. You know what I'm saying? So the tongue is very, very important, and it's very strong, and it's very, very powerful. And the media uses the tongue to brainwash society, to condition you to think that it's normal for a man to want to be a woman and dress as a woman, and a woman to want to be a man and dress as a man, to get sexual reassignment surgeries, and to address a man as a woman, and to dress as a man if you're a woman, and so on and so forth. So the tongue is very, very powerful, and the media uses it quite craftily. You know what I'm saying? So don't think that the tongue, this teaching that James is giving us, is so light that it doesn't have an application into 21st century. It has an application even before James wrote it, and all the way up until now. Since the foundations of the earth, the application of the tongue is valid today. So let me go on. It says here, James says, these sensual and devilish earthly wisdom, strife and envy bring forth confusion and every evil work. And that's exactly what I was just talking about. It's utter confusion to tell a child that's 2 years old or 3 years old, if you don't want to be a boy, you can be a boy if they're a girl, or vice versa. So the tongue is very powerful, and the media uses the tongue in order to go against what Yahuah has set and firm from the foundations of the earth. So this is very important that we get the tongue and how it's used against Yahuah, how it's used against righteousness, how it's used against the people of Yah. We must be very, very wise in how we use our tongue and how we have conversations with people and how we praise Yahuah and how we elevate his word and how we walk upright in his word as much as we possibly and humanly can. The last two verses, 17 and 18. But wisdom from above is pure, peaceable, gentle, easy, and good for persuasion, and full of compassion, benefits without partiality and hypocrisy. As a result, fruits of righteousness is the result of those who bring wisdom to an assembly or conversation. So when we talk about bringing wisdom to assembly or conversation, it's not our wisdom. It's the wisdom of Yah. So don't get fed, don't get get your head all big and stuff, because it has nothing to do with you. It's everything to do with Yahuah, okay? So I wrote down a couple more verses and stuff that I thought were applicable, and I'm gonna start off from Romans chapter 1, verse 3. I'm not gonna read it, but I'm just gonna just give you a little synopsis of what the writer was talking about. So in Romans 1 and chapter 1, verse 30, Paul mentions backbiters, which are numbered among haters of Yah. Did you hear that? Backbiters are numbered among the haters of Yah. Backbiters use their tongues to slander Yah and his followers. So when you talk about that Antichrist spirit that's in the world now, he's talking about that here. Backbiters use their tongues to slander Yah and his followers. So when you hear people coming against the nation of Israel, coming against the awakening that we as a people have, denying our heritage and our roots, denying who we are as the children of Yah, as the saints, these are backbiters. These are people that are coming against Yahuah, who in his word says who his people are, says how his people should live, and through grace and the extension of the olive branch to other nations that come into line with this truth and his teaching, these backbiters say this stuff is not true. They're not just atheists. They're people that are within Christianity and all this denomination, all this branches and offshoots and stuff, that are teaching false doctrine, that are teaching that Israel is somebody else and Israel is not us, or is teaching that it's okay to be a pedophile or homosexual and we'll just move them from parish to parish, or that you can get your 503(1)(c) or 501(c) or whatever, your church can get tax exempt. And because they're tax exempt, they refuse to speak against the murders and the killings against our people. It doesn't matter, if you're a denomination of Christianity, whether you're Baptist or Methodist or Lutheran or whatever, Jehovah's Witness or Seventh-day Adventist or whatever you are, right? If your tongue in this particular case is bridled, not by the teachings of Yahuah or by the word of Yahuah, but if it's bridled by a state or federal organization that says, because you are tax exempt, then you can't speak about political issues. And so that's what's happening in the Christendom today, is that you don't see all these tens of hundreds of thousands churches coming forth and speaking against this use of pronouns, new pronouns, this transgender, this lesbian and gay and bisexual and transgender movement. When you don't hear the so-called leaders of Christianity speaking out against these things in mass numbers. I'm not talking about one church or one non-denominational church that's not affiliated with organized religion of say Baptists or something like that. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about all churches, from the one down the street in your neighborhood to the mega churches, T.D. Jakes, Paula White, those type of big mega churches that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers worldwide, are not speaking out against these things. Their tongue is bridled by losing tax exemption for the monies that they get from their parishioners or from their congregation, which goes totally against, and I think James, he warned in chapter 1, he says, James admonishes teachers and warns them to not teach the detriment of believers. You hear? He tells us that there is greater condemnation to those that do. So these pastors and teachers and leaders of Christendom, or even those that are within the house of Israel, that are teaching false doctrine or teaching contrary to the law, contrary to the scriptures, contrary to the prophets, these people are going to meet a greater condemnation when Yahuah and the Mashiach return. So let's keep going. So, and Paul talks about in chapter 1, verse 30, that backbiters use their tongues to slander Yah and his fellows. So these people are backbiters by definition. James also mentions 9 to 12 that those who use the tongue to do both bless Elohim and curse man should not. In the chapter 1 of Romans, Paul is putting those that use their tongue and not control it in the same category of haters of Yah, filled with unrighteousness and covenant breakers. Okay, so he's talking about these teachers and these preachers and these pastors and these leaders in Christendom and those within the nation of Israel that are teaching false doctrine, that are backbiters. They're teaching against Yah. They're cursing him, and so he's condemning them. So it's really important that we continue to control or tame our tongues, to be slow to speak. We have to consider these things when we're dealing every day with our bosses, with our children, with our husbands, with our wives, with elders in our communities, with children. We have a responsibility. So we have to tame our tongue. So not speaking harshness and just keeping it. One of the things I do when I find myself in an argument or something, I'll just back out of it. And if it doesn't matter if I'm right or wrong, it doesn't matter. What matters is what comes out of my mouth. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just, bow out of the confrontation and really just think about what it is. I always tell myself, okay, let's give yourself 3 or 4 hours or sleep on this, and you might see things differently tomorrow. And if not, there's a way that you can have a conversation with this person to get your point across, especially if it's really important. And it has to do with the eternity of their souls, right? Or your soul. It's important that you have those conversations, but it's important that you take the time to just step back from that conversation and, pray and ask for guidance from Yah, and, have a conversation with that person that's not filled with anger and animosity and just in the moment. So it's real important that we do that. So I try to do that. I'm not perfect or anything, but I do make a conscious effort to try to do those things on a regular basis. And then I found some really, really good examples from our forefathers. And Psalm 10, verse 7, this is referencing the wicked and his vain imaginations. It says in verse 7, his mouth is full of cursings, deceit, fraud, and under his tongue is mischief and vanity. We can see examples of this just every day. I'll use a card. If you go to a used car lot, that's a great example. This new person they are master manipulators. They will sell you your own clothes that you're wearing. So this is just an example of they're full of cursings, deceit, fraud, and under his tongue, and mischief and vanity. It's about the sale, okay? And they'll try to lead you to, they're like these stages. They try to get you to reel you in so that you can buy. So, and most times, a lot of times they're trying to sell you something, tell you in society, basically, buyer beware. You should beware. You should be very wary. Psalm 12 and 4, David is speaking of how the godly and faithful are not among men anymore, and how the wicked says, with our tongues we will prevail. Our lips are our own. Who is Lord over us? And we're seeing that right now. I'm not going to get political or nothing, but politics is full of that. They govern. We live in a world that governs itself, that doesn't take into account the wisdom of Yahuah's word. He has an answer for everything in the word and in his word, and we govern ourselves. We don't let a Yahuah govern us. Our Elohim is not governing us. We right now are sitting under the leadership of men that seek to take this world, this country down a path that is detrimental to the majority of the people that live in, especially the children of Israel that are scattered throughout the globe. So this is, a lot of people are saying that this is very monumental time in our history as a people and where we are living right now. I agree. I don't put a lot of weight in politics. I don't believe anything they say, but I do watch it, and so that I can know what the enemy is thinking, what his plans are. But I know what our Yahuah's plans are for us, so I focus on that as opposed to um, anything else. So I'm going to keep going. Psalm 34 and 13. Here David is blessing Yah and speaking of Yah's salvation and how he was delivered by Yah from his enemies. Here David advises us to keep our tongues from evil and to not let our lips speak falsely and deceitfully. David says he will bless Yah at all times. His praise shall continually be in his mouth. And we should mimic David in this sense. I was talking to a friend of mine who is a single parent, and she was telling, just sort of like telling a couple of us, what she was going through. And I told her, I said, one of the things that helps me, and I was a single parent raising my son who is much grown and gone now, but that, praise is what really kind of deflated. I think that one of the elders was teaching on that praise a couple weeks back in one of our Shabbat lessons, that how praise will just like dismantle the heaviness in your house. So we should be praising him constantly. David, our forefathers, telling us that he will bless Yah at all times. His praise shall continually be in his mouth. And we should mimic this. We should praise Yahuah, our Elohim, Israel. And I want to thank you for coming back. And Shabbat Shalom.